Serving up high school hoop action at its best. December 20th through 23rd at Portland's Memorial Coliseum. Tickets at all Ticketmaster outlets. Only the best will survive.
Burden of Proof. Weekdays 12:30 Eastern on CNN.
This is a CNN Election 2000 special report.
The election without end approaches its final hour. 60 minutes from now, Al Gore addresses the nation. One night after the Supreme Court dealt a fatal blow to his White House hopes. George W. Bush will follow with his own primetime remarks.
See what happens. Thank you.
His first chance to appear without challenge as the president-elect. As the players prepare to write Election 2000's final chapter, not everyone wants to close the books.
He'll be the president legally, but he does not have moral authority because his crown did not come from the people. It came from the judges.
We look ahead to the next American president and survey the 5 weeks just passed to see how history will judge this election and its dynamic ending. Reporting now from Washington, anchors Bernard Shaw and Judy Woodruff. And in New York, senior analyst Jeff Greenfield.
Good evening. We are 1 hour away from what could be the biggest speech in the political career of Albert Gore, Jr. A speech bigger than any concession speech that we in the news media and even the vice president himself thought he would give more than a month ago.
Gore's address is expected to close out Election 2000, an election that went from being just a tight race to an eye-opening civics lesson, and then, at times, a heart-wrenching legal battle.
At one point, more than a dozen lawsuits were unfolding across Florida and in federal courts in Atlanta and the nation's capital.
And that's not to mention the election night confusion that humbled many of us in the news media.
Our colleague Jeff Greenfield joins us now from New York. Jeff?
You know, Bernie and Judy, in 1824, Andrew Jackson lost the White House to a son of a president, John Quincy Adams, even though he won the popular vote. 4 years later, in a rematch, Jackson won the White House. In 1888, President Grover Cleveland lost the White House to a grandson of a president, Benjamin Harrison, even though Grover Cleveland won the popular vote. 4 years later, Cleveland won the rematch. If Al Gore, who has lost tonight to the son of a president whom he beat in the popular vote, wants a rematch in 4 years, what he says tonight and how he says it will be a key first step in that potential rematch. Folks.
We'll be coming back to you a lot during this evening. Well, Vice President Gore will have plenty of time to think about his political future, but today he spent part of the day tying up loose ends from Election 2000. CNN's Jonathan Karl joins us live from the Naval Observatory, where the Vice President lives. Jonathan?
And believe it or not, Judy, the Vice President has spent much of the night here tonight entertaining guests at his home at the Naval Observatory, a long-scheduled holiday party, obviously scheduled long before we knew we'd still be in the middle of this election battle and on into the day of his concession speech. The Vice President, though, has written that speech, we are told, and all the pieces are in place for what some of his supporters are saying will be the biggest night of his political life.
The battle finally over. The Gore team is packing its bags. Lawyers, political strategists, and volunteers closing their makeshift headquarters in Tallahassee. At about noon, behind closed doors, the Vice President gave his first farewell speech of the day via speakerphone to his legal team, thanking them for creating, quote, the greatest virtual law firm in history. During the call, the Vice President invited members of his legal team to a holiday party at the Vice Presidential residence, and then jokingly told them, quote, my house is the one with the people out front yelling, get out of Dick Cheney's house. Gore's aides are using words like gracious and statesmanlike to describe the Vice President's speech tonight. As one top advisor said, quote, this is about helping people heal and moving forward. Republicans have the same hopes for the Vice President's speech.
I've seen other senators say that the most important speech, perhaps, at this juncture will be the one that is made by the loser rather than the winner. I expect he will be magnanimous. I expect he will ask the American people to join him in supporting the next President of the United States.
Most senior Democrats agree that it is time for Gore to concede, although some expressing outrage at the Supreme Court decision are suggesting he should fight on until the Electoral College votes are actually cast and counted.
Well, the man has gone through a lot. And for those people who say that he should withdraw, they should walk in his shoes. I think it's a personal decision. It's a political decision. And we have to recognize it just doesn't concern him. It concerns our Constitution, and it concerns the feeling of the American people.
And Jesse Jackson held a rally in Tallahassee protesting what he called an illegitimate victory for George W. Bush. Afterwards, in an interview on CNN, Jackson said Bush will be a president without the moral authority to lead.
He'll be the president legally, but he does not have moral authority because his crown did not come from the people. It came from the judges.
One top Gore aide said the vice president will talk about the principles he fought for during this recount period, but will say that he will respect the rule of law and also talk about how it is time for Republicans, Democrats, and independents to get together because the country's problems, the country's challenges are too great for partisanship. Judy.
John, how many of the people around the vice president would agree with Jesse Jackson that a President Bush will not have the moral authority to lead?
Well, Judy, you know, several people around the vice president, although the vice president has been very direct in telling his aides that he does not want to see people on his staff, people associated with him, questioning either the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, questioning the wisdom of his decision, or questioning the legitimacy of George W. Bush. That said, there are several of his top aides that, in fact, are very upset even that George W. Bush is giving a speech tonight. Several aides that I've spoken to have said this should have been Al Gore's night, and they think it's inappropriate that an hour after Al Gore gives his speech that George W. Bush will come out and do the same.
All right, John, Carl, thanks very much. The fight continues in some ways. Bernie.
Governor Bush remained relatively quiet this day out of courtesy to the vice president, saving his comments until after Gore addresses the nation. Joining us with some reaction to this day's events from the Bush camp, CNN senior political correspondent Candy Crowley. Candy.
Bernie, this is in effect tonight George Bush's debut speech as president-elect. He has been hoping and waiting for this moment for 36 days now. He no longer has to hope. He has only a couple of more hours to wait. He is the man of the hour, just not this hour.
Nice to see you all.
The Bush family has taken political and personal blows in the past, says a friend, and the governor now wants to give the vice president room to do things his way.
I woke him up.
So George Bush was seen but not heard to say much as he waited out the evening speech of Al Gore. What follows will be the first speech of the second Bush era. The governor says a senior staffer will deliver a tone-setting speech. He will talk about seizing the moment and using it as an opportunity to bring people together, to put national interest above partisan ones.
I want him to make a very positive, unifying sort of speech. He needs to reassure the American people. I think he needs to ask for their help and their support. And I think he'll need to make some commitments of his intentions.
There will be talk of general goals, but no specifics, no word on a cabinet or the senior staff. Bush has had his national security team and senior staff largely locked in and waiting to go, but the announcements will wait a bit longer. Coming together, says an aide, is the most important message tonight, and it stands alone. Bush will use the Democrat-controlled House chamber of the Texas legislature as the backdrop for his address. He will be introduced by the House Speaker, a Democrat. Message, some of my best friends are Democrats. I have worked with them, and we got things done. For Bush, reaching out will mean going an extra mile. His campaign says the governor hopes to meet with the vice president, among others, during a visit to Washington, now sooner rather than later. Bush often flashed his bipartisan credentials during the campaign, but this is not about politics or even philosophy. This is now about practicality. George Bush will need to move this nation forward, but first, he must pull it together. Bernie?
Candy, the Bush camp is using this theme, coming together, but in reality, politically, during the campaign, this was a candidate who said he was out to restore dignity to the White House.
Absolutely, and you know, there were many times during the campaign that in fact there was a tone, if you will, that was you know, harsh, that it was it was the heat of the campaign, and a lot of things were said on both sides. And whenever George Bush was asked about that, he said this is about politicking, and governing is something else again. Look, what they know is just the reality of it again, that you know, if he wants to get anything done, if there is to be success in this administration, it has to be done with both Democrats and with Republicans. And in fact, you know, tonight, Bernie, much of this speech is about reaching out to Democrats. It's not about reaching out to his own party. It's about reaching across that aisle already and going for Democrats, because that's the only way he's going to be able to lead.
Candy Crowley waiting for the speech in Austin. Thank you.
And joining us now for some insight on this remarkable evening, CNN's senior White House correspondent, John King, in Washington. John, we keep hearing that the vice president is going to be gracious, that there's not going to be certainly any bitterness in the speech. But maybe I'm projecting, but it seems to me if I had lost a presidential race under these circumstances, there'd be a tremendous amount of regret, even anguish about it. Are you hearing anything about that from his aides as to where he is, the vice president, privately?
Well, privately, we hear there's regret, there's frustration, there's anger. We know he's called home to Tennessee to ask friends in the month long we've been waiting for this to be over, how did I lose my home state? We know that he's questioned others about the legal strategy they have pursued down in Florida. We should note, of course, though, that he made all the difficult final calls in the end. Those decisions on legal strategy were his. But go back to your point, Jeff, at the beginning of the show. This is a man who must decide in the next several months whether he plans to run again. So for tonight, he needs to put all that aside. He needs to explain to the American people why he did what he did, why we went through this the past 30-plus days, and why he believes it is critical now for Democrats to embrace Governor Bush as the legitimate president of the United States. He must do that. His aides say he understands if he is to leave this process with credibility, enough credibility to perhaps mount a comeback. And some evidence he's thinking about that. Among the phone calls today, a thank you call to John Sweeney, the head of the AFL-CIO, a very powerful man in helping the vice president get to the nomination and in turning out labor voters on Election Day. So you get a sense here, everyone says he hasn't made up his mind, hasn't thought about it, wants nothing more than to get a vacation in after another week or so, but you also get the sense that he's certainly thinking about it.
So does that suggest that in this speech that he gives tonight, he's going to remind people of some of the issues on which he ran, or is that the sort of thing that's just not the right time for that now?
What we are told is he will give a general sense, as Jonathan Carl mentioned, that it's time for the nation to come together because there are problems that need to be solved. Education, Social Security, health care. No, we will not get a campaign speech from the vice president tonight. But this is a man who wants the American people to remember him fondly, who wants the American people to think that he fought for a good cause as he steps aside here. And he is a person, remember, most of all, if he is to run again, that would have to first go through a Democratic primary that would be much more competitive next time. He will not get the pass he received this time. So most of all, he wants the Democratic base out there to think that he fought for them, that this fight was for them, and that he will forever be their friend, and that perhaps he might be calling them again a year or two down the road.
Just one quick last point. My experience is that aides are always willing to be more publicly, or at least in communication with someone like you, more open about their anger than the principal. Are you hearing from the aides a little more anger at the way this ended than from Al Gore?
Oh, certainly. They're scathingly critical of the Supreme Court. They believe the Supreme Court stopped the recount on Saturday and then said last night, you know what, we have to call this off because there's not time enough to finish the recount by midnight tonight. They're scathingly critical of the conservative majority of the court. And let's step back and remember there's a bit of a Hatfields-McCoy nature to all of this. It was Bill Clinton and Al Gore who ran George Bush out of the White House 8 years ago. George W. Bush, an enforcer in his father's White House, was furious at the time. Now he will come to Washington next week, sit down with President Clinton for a courtesy call, sit down with the vice president for a conciliation meeting, perhaps even lunch, we're told. Then he will prepare to move into the White House that his family believes was stolen from them 8 years ago.
John King, who will be covering the first battle in the Iowa caucuses of 2004 in about a week and a half. Thanks very much. Judy.
All right, and you may be prescient, Jeff. Well, for some more insight on this incredible election, we're joined by CNN senior political analyst Bill Schneider. Bill.
It's our 864 of election night, and we're still here. It's the longest election night on record. What we're waiting to hear from Al Gore, I think, tonight is, will he use the word concede? That's the interesting word. It's often called a concession speech, but to say, I concede is a way of saying, I lost the election. He doesn't believe he lost the election. He knows that he didn't lose the popular vote. He's beating George Bush by about 300,000 votes nationwide, and he honestly believes that he won the state of Florida, but they just won't count the votes. And eventually they may count the votes because they are public property, and there are several news organizations that have applied for permission to count the votes, and they can under Florida law. So he thinks eventually he'll be shown to have won the state of Florida. So he doesn't want to say he lost. His campaign found a new principle, a new cause in the post-election period. Every vote must count. He's rallied Democrats to that cause, and he doesn't want to give it up.
Bill, can he not set a tone in tonight's remarks without actually using the words, I concede?
I think he can. Essentially, he wants to make it clear he's not challenging the legitimacy of George Bush's claim on the presidency. He's going to withdraw his own campaign, but he doesn't want to say he lost. He has to make it clear to Democrats that they shouldn't challenge the legitimacy of Bush's campaign. Otherwise, I think he will be seen as what some Republicans have already been saying, a sore loser. And that is no way to have a future in American politics.
All right, Bill Snyder, thanks very much. And Bernie.
Next, election 2000's place in history.
Perspective from historian Robert Dallek when we return. And why African Americans continue to carry the fight for Al Gore.
Later, Greta Van Susteren dissects the Supreme Court's ruling on election 2000.
And a preview of the speeches by Al Gore and George W. Bush with experts on political communication. You're watching a CNN special report.
Open up our doors, peek around the corners at all the great stores, the ones you look for, names you know, a few to discover. You want selection? We got that covered. Grab a friend, bring the family, bring yourself and see all that shopping can be. Shopping with Simon, Simon is waiting for you.
Mall centers and shopping from Simon, simply the best shopping there is.
What's the word I'm thinking of?
Is it no?
No.
No.
Okie doke.
Whoa.
No.
Want banks to compete over you? At LendingTree, fill out one simple form and get up to 4 offers.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
When banks compete, you win at LendingTree.com.
One reason you work so hard is to enjoy the good things in life. And if you're getting financial advice you can trust, your biggest worry should be whether or not the fish are biting. At Raymond James, we have no products to push or sales quotas to meet, so our only interest is in helping you maximize your financial success. So instead of waiting for your ship to come in, you can already be on board. Raymond James, committed to your financial future.
That snowball is a great way to tell customers Staples has technology gifts.
Greetings. Handhelds make terrific gifts. So do digital cameras.
Nice price.
Excuse me, could you tell me about the scanner fax copier?
No.
But I want to get it for my brother.
Get him a cell phone.
No, he really wants one of these.
He can't have her. I love her.
What?
No, no, no. Weeping, weeping.
It's okay. We found you someone else.
Oh.
For technology gifts they really want, it's Staples.
Years before America's electric cooperatives forged the nationwide alliance, Touchstone Energy, neighbors built their own electric utility to power lives and communities. Now Touchstone Energy cooperatives serve millions of homes and businesses. Customers large and small get state-of-the-art technology and affordable service. From the one-room schoolhouse to the communities and businesses of tomorrow, trust Touchstone Energy, the power of human connections. We are America's electric cooperatives.
There'll be more conspiracy theories arise out of this to make the single bullet theory look very solid.
Well, this election clearly is one for the history books. After 5 weeks of legal and political battles, George W. Bush, who came out behind in the popular vote, as we mentioned, will move into the White House. Such a situation is not unheard of. In fact, 3 previous presidents won the election without winning the popular vote. The first time, 1824, Andrew Jackson got the most votes from the people and the Electoral College, but not a majority of either vote. The election went to Congress, and the presidency went to John Quincy Adams. In the 1876 election, the calendar turned to the next year before Rutherford B. Hayes was declared the winner. His challenger, New York Governor Samuel Tilden, won the popular vote, but 3 states sent competing slates of electors to Washington, and a special congressional commission recognized the Hayes electors, giving him the presidency by 1 electoral vote. In 1888, President Grover Cleveland won the popular vote, but Benjamin Harrison captured the state's richest in electoral votes, and he won handily in the Electoral College. What does this mean for the present circumstances? We'll try to find out by talking with presidential historian Robert Dallek from Boston University. Professor Dallek, I noted at the outset that John Quincy Adams and Benjamin Harrison lost the next time out to the people they'd beaten. Rutherford Hayes didn't even bother to run again. Does this suggest anything about George W. Bush's political future?
Oh, these historical analogies are imperfect. And of course, this is the great challenge now to George W. Bush, that a crisis like this presents an opportunity, and he can rise above it and be an effective president, and he could win a second term. On the other hand, he could fall on his face the way Rutherford B. Hayes, I think, did, and the way Harrison did. So it's an open question, and this is, I've got to be on his mind. I think the understanding of the odds against him of getting a second term. After all, he's lost the popular vote. This will be the biggest deficit of any entering president, any president-elect in American history, 337,000. Before that, Tilden won that election over Hayes by 264,000. Of course, it was a much smaller population, but still, to lose by 337,000 votes and then end up in the White House, that's a pretty difficult number to overcome.
Well, one thing, though, that those 19th century presidents didn't have that George W. Bush will have is something called television.
Yep.
And we do remember that in 1960, John Kennedy more or less tied Richard Nixon. There are some people who think he actually lost the popular vote. And pretty quickly, through the medium of television, he established himself as the president. Doesn't this suggest that the President-elect Bush, if we can call him that, does have one big advantage in trying to establish his power as president?
Jeff, he does, but there's a big difference between 1960 and 2001. In 1961, John Kennedy faced an international crisis. There was all this discussion of the missile gap, the threat from the Soviet Union, Castro in Cuba, and foreign affairs is a unifying issue. It's something you can rally the country around. And George W. Bush doesn't have anything like that. And so even with television, although I think you're quite right, indeed, my guess is that tonight, from everything I'm hearing, this will be a masterful performance. He's going to speak in the well of the Texas lower house. He's going to be introduced by a Democratic Speaker of the lower house. It's very shrewd politics, and it's going to be orchestrated on television in a very effective way, and that will help him, I think, launch his presidency. But there's a difference between this and 1961.
For sure. But one of the things that happened when John Kennedy was elected by this very narrow margin was the day after he was elected, his first two appointments were reappointing J. Edgar Hoover as head of the FBI and Allen Dulles as head of the CIA as a way of saying continuity, unity, and also probably a way of saying, I don't have the mandate to change this even if I wanted to. Does that suggest that what we've heard about already, the idea that President-elect Bush will have to reach into the Democratic Party for some of the people in his White House staff is now a political necessity?
Yeah. Well, I think he might have done some of this anyway, because, you know, there's an irony in this election. The way I see it is that Bush's one great strength has been, at least in Texas, has been that he, as described himself, a unifier. He was someone who was very accommodating to the Democrats. And he's going to enter the White House now with this strength of being a unifier and accommodator, and he needs to do that. And, of course, it's going to depend on who he puts in place. If he picks some minor Democrats in minor positions, it's not going to help him very much. He needs one or two, I think, prominent Democrats who can give him a kind of credibility with folks on the other side of the aisle.
All right, Professor Robert Dallek, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see whether or not these prognostications come true in the next 4 years. Back to Washington.
Right.
And up next, some thoughts from CNN's Wolf Blitzer on where the Gore team is assigning blame. For those of us in our line of work, the answer may hit a little bit too close to home.
When you were sad and lonely, you know you want me. Back off, he's the killer.
I will no longer be a silent witness to my own kids' education.
I will no longer sit and watch the system fail my kids.
I will no longer let them use my tax dollars.
My tax dollars to tell me where to send my kids to school.
I will no longer let them put the system's
needs above my kids' needs. I will no longer let freedom and choice be the American way in everything.
Except their education. I want to have choices.
I want to have a voice.
I want to decide where to send my kids to school.
Have your bags been in your possession since you packed them? Did you know your company's stock just jumped 13%?
No.
Did you know Geldman got food poisoning and can't make the meeting?
What?
Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to check your email before you board.
How?
Here. It's the Sprint PCS Wireless Web for Business. You can access your company's network, use email, share information in real time. And the calls are clear.
Thanks.
Thank him.
The Sprint PCS Clear Wireless Workplace. Because business can't wait.
Yeah, it was amazing. Whole different world.
You were a volunteer?
Yeah. I saw a world that wasn't so fortunate. They needed help. In business, I see a world full of opportunity. To help me take advantage of those opportunities, I invest in international funds with T. Rowe Price. I chose them because they work with analysts all over the world. See, I know what a difference being there can actually make.
T. Rowe Price, helping people invest with confidence for over 60 years.
A year ago, these internet whiz kids were riding high. Today, they're out on the street and picking up the pieces. Willow Bay asked some .com casualties what they learned, and would they do it all again? The Moneyline News Hour, tomorrow on CNN.
Once he saw her. She's going to get me in trouble.
You are in trouble.
Once he loved her.
I know the old man likes you. That don't mean he's going to set still for you courting his daughter.
He'd risk everything for the woman he was forbidden to love.
I have to see you.
I can't. I made a promise.
Academy Award winner Matt Damon.
I'm going to love you till the day I die.
All the Pretty Horses. Rated PG-13. In theaters everywhere Christmas Day.
No matter what Al Gore does today, the Democratic Party is committed to making sure that the public knows who actually won in the state of Florida.
Joining us now with more insight into Election 2000's endgame, CNN's Wolf Blitzer. Normally you see him in the anchor chair at this time of the evening. He covered Al Gore as part of the White House beat for 7 years. Wolf, the anger inside the Gore team, where's it directed most?
You know, there's obviously a lot of anger at the Supreme Court justices, at some people in Florida, Republican officials in Florida. But I have to tell you, for these past 5 weeks, I've spoken to a lot of the Gore people on an almost daily basis. And the theme, a lot of them, most of them, keep hitting directly at me, is that they think this would have been a totally different situation these past 5 weeks if the TV networks had not called George W. Bush the winner shortly after 2 a.m. that day during our election coverage. For 45 minutes, we were all speculating about the Gore presidency. They think the dynamic of these past 5 weeks would have been totally different if we had said that night, you know what? We don't know who won Florida. It's just simply too close to call. They're going to have to take a closer look at the ballots. And as a result, they're really angry at what we did. And they say, and perhaps rightfully, that we're going to have to take a real close look at our role in how this unfolded because of the mistakes that we made that night.
Well, institutionally, CNN already is doing that. Another subject. Any second guessing about not turning to Bill Clinton for help?
You know, surprisingly, there isn't a whole lot of second guessing on that. You would have thought some people, especially Bill Clinton fans, said, well, you should have used Bill Clinton more. He was so popular. He had a base. But among the inner circle of the Gore folks, they're not second guessing that much. They're saying that he would have been too divisive. And the fact that they carried swing states like Pennsylvania and Michigan, which were critical to the election, that was in part because they didn't highlight Bill Clinton. They highlighted Al Gore. So on the Bill Clinton front, I don't think there's a whole lot of second guessing.
So what are they second guessing?
I think they're second guessing. I think John King touched on this earlier. They're second guessing themselves, and Al Gore is second guessing himself in not carrying his home state of Tennessee. But even on a relatively minor, what they thought at the time situation, not spending more time in a state, let's say a traditionally Democratic state like West Virginia. Those 5 electoral votes in West Virginia, you add them to the 267 electoral votes that Al Gore did have, would have made all the difference. Traditionally, West Virginia goes Democratic. They didn't spend a lot of time there. George W. Bush went to West Virginia in the final days of this campaign, and it obviously had an impact.
Thanks, Wolf. We'll see you in a few hours hosting that special post-speech report, the special report at 11 p.m. Eastern, a full hour.
Thank you, Bree.
Welcome, Judy.
All right, and after the break coming up, legal analyst Greta Van Susteren takes a long, hard look at yesterday's ruling by the highest court in the land.
Need extra cash for the holidays? Don't charge it on your credit cards. Get a second mortgage with no closing costs from Ditech.com. With a second mortgage, you can consolidate all your existing high-interest debts, get the cash you need for the holidays, and end up with one lower monthly payment. A second mortgage with no closing cost is smart money from Ditech.com. Log on now for fast online approval or call us at 1-800-71-FIXED.
There was a time you only met your customer face-to-face. Not anymore. Blue Martini software provides the information to make the sale wherever you meet. On your website, at your call center, on a wireless device, and other places you've never imagined, allowing you to be everywhere at once. Everywhere is good.
It's seeking out companies with accelerating earnings, for we believe they have the brightest futures. It's hand-selecting the best of those companies, one by one. It's trusting in a process that can deliver solid, long-term results. The American Century Ultra Fund. It's what we call American Potential. American Century Investments. Contact us or your investment professional.
Join Bill Press and Tucker Carlson in the Spin Room by phone, chat room, or email. Tonight at a special time, midnight Eastern on CNN.
AT&T.
Pay-per-view.
Waka waka wee.
Wow, you got a really great laugh.
Prehistoric to pre-hysteric. The Flintstones in Viva Rock Vegas.
It's in demand on AT&T Digital Cable. Stay home and enjoy the laughs tonight.
Hey, what's going on in here?
The Christie School is sponsored by your local Portland Metro Nissan dealers.
Burden of Proof, weekdays 12:30 Eastern on CNN.
The last few weeks have been exhausting, I think, for the entire court. But in a lot of ways, it shows the strength of our system of government.
Comments today from Justice Clarence Thomas, who, with the other justices of the Supreme Court, 22 and a half hours ago, Greta Van Susteren, handed down a decision that brought this presidential election some finality. We now know who the president's going to be, and it's directly related to what the justices did. Greta Van Susteren, a legal analyst, joining us now. Why couldn't this have been a simpler decision? Why did it have to have so many dissents, so many different pieces to it?
Well, primarily because there are 9 people making the decision, and this is such a volatile issue, and 2 people looking at a particular issue may have a different view. I mean, take the simple issue of the hand counts, which is were the hand counts constitutional or not. And one of the big things that bothered the majority is that there were differing standards from county to county to county. But Justice Stevens said, well, wait a second. No, there was one simple standard. That's the voter's intent set by the legislature in Florida. Both views are, frankly, defensible. The problem is more people thought that it was unconstitutional than thought it was constitutional. So when you have lots of decision makers, you're going to have this problem.
Greta, why did the dissents in this opinion from 4 justices feel so much more seemed so much more strongly felt than did the majority opinion, or what we could see of it?
Because of the passion. This is democracy. This is voting. You know, so many people marched in my lifetime for the right to vote. Some of these justices have been very passionate about the right to vote. Justice Stevens thought that the majority was disenfranchising voters, people's right to speak, the right to choose, which makes America different than many other countries. Justice Ginsburg was concerned that we were stripping the states of their rights, that the states get to make the decisions. I mean, these are important issues, and they knew that America was watching. They knew so much because they actually, for the first time, stepped out of what they usually do and let us have audio tapes. They were well aware that America was watching, how important it is to each one of us.
Was it Justice Felix Frankfurter who wrote about beware of getting into a political thicket, and yet that's precisely what the justices have done with this ruling? Is this setting an important precedent for the court to have done this?
Well, certainly, I mean, they are oftentimes called to deal with unpopular matters such as this, where there's huge disagreement. I mean, it certainly was unprecedented that we got the audio tapes. It was not unprecedented that they got involved with this case. Look, there's going to be a lot of criticism that this is a political decision. But remember, each member of the court was appointed by a politician. But when he or she dons the robes, you're supposed to abandon that.
Greta, over your shoulder, we're seeing pictures of the motorcade with Vice President Al Gore arriving at the Eisenhower Old Executive Office building here in Washington, D.C., just a matter of a couple of miles from the Vice President's residence. Sounds like there are some supporters, maybe government employees out there who are maybe work for the Vice President, cheering as his motorcade pulls into that building, which sits immediately adjacent to the White House. This also happens to be the building where the Vice President has his office. He has sort of a token office in the White House where he presumably spends time, but his main work, we're told, is done. And that's where most of his staff has an office, in the old executive office building.
Can I add one other thing why there's so much passion? Remember, this is a virtual tie. The American people are divided. So it doesn't seem so unusual that the United States Supreme Court would have a virtual tie. But fortunately, we have an uneven number of justices so that at least someone usually wins. It's usually 5-4. We don't often have 3-3-3, but at least that's one of the points of having 9 people so that we can break the tie.
One other thing, Greta, you were talking about this just before we went on the air. What's the significance of the body of this opinion being so-called per curiam, meaning there are no names on it?
You know, that actually sort of distresses me. You know, the body of the opinion is per curiam. The justices didn't sign on and say, me too, I'm for it. We know that it represents the court. And I actually think it's sort of extraordinary that these civil servants, that's what they are, and who make such an important decision, sort of don't step up to the plate and say, I'm deciding this. When you look at the opinion, you have the per curiam, which is the decision of the court. You then have what are called concurring opinions and dissents. And 2 justices' names don't appear there at all. Justices O'Connor and Justice Kennedy. And if you remember, those are the 2.
They were the ones who were the swing.
They were the swing. Now, some people say their fingerprints are all over this decision. I don't see them. I want to see their names. I want to see who voted, how, when, and where. And actually, that surprises me that the court seems to sort of, I use the term hidden. I think a lot of people disagree with me, but I think step up to the plate and be accounted for in such an important decision. Get rid of that per curiam. Sign on.
All right. Greta Van Susteren, thanks very much. We appreciate it. We'll see you a little later. Bernie.
And still ahead on this special edition of The World Today, questioning the legitimacy of this election. Some Florida voters say they were disenfranchised, and that made the difference. What they plan to do about it, next.
Open up our doors, peek around the corners at all the great stores, the ones you look for, names you know, a few to discover. You want selection? We got that covered. Grab a friend, bring the family, bring yourself and see all that shopping can be. Shopping with Simon. Simon is waiting for you.
Mall centers and shopping from Simon. Simply the best shopping there is.
Buyers and sellers find pricing on millions of products anywhere in the world an impossible feat? Not at all. Become a member today at pricesaroundtheworld.com and see how we make it possible. Does the world know your price?
Jewelry. Leather. Crystal. Cashmere. Shop the world's finest brands for the holidays. LuxuryFinder.com.
Dudley, get the paper.
A clean, crisp newspaper delivered to your printer automatically.
That's my final offer. That's my final offer. That's my final offer.
Mr. Tyler, right here.
Want banks to compete over you? At LendingTree, fill out one simple form and get up to 4 offers.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Tyler. When banks compete, you win at LendingTree.com.
Your nest egg. You've managed it well. But what happens after you retire? T. Rowe Price's unique retirement income manager will help you plan wisely. No matter how the market turns. So when you tap into your savings, you'll know you've planned well for the future. T. Rowe Price Retirement Income Manager, planning to last a lifetime.
I believe that there should be a concession speech. As difficult as it is, I believe that George W. Bush at this point is the winner and Al Gore is the loser. Now, you know, that's difficult for some to accept, but that's the fact.
No matter what Al Gore says this night, there won't be those who do not rally around the new president. Those who say the events of the past 5 weeks put the legitimacy of a Bush administration in question. Among them, many African-American voters in Florida who say they were denied their legal right to vote. CNN's Bill Delaney has more.
On the march in Tallahassee, Florida, and promising more to come all over the country, voters.
We want justice! We want justice!
Led by Reverend Jesse Jackson, minorities, union members, who say George Bush will be president because they weren't counted.
It should be a recount because America can do better.
It's going to scare the African-American vote a lot because we see that justice was not due to all and justice was not given to all. They would not come out and vote.
Tens of thousands of African-American votes, protesters said, were not counted in Florida alone because machines didn't work or because registered voters' names weren't on official lists at polling places. Jackson said the loser won.
Driving while I'm black and now voting while I'm black. The election was essentially taken and stolen. You must get your votes in the public booth, not the private chambers of judges who are your political allies.
Jackson called for a continuing series now of nonviolent protests against what he called an illegitimate election. Anger over the vote is not limited to Florida. In other places, too, there's a lingering sense an historic turnout for minorities has led to an historic injustice. In Newark, New Jersey, with the 19th largest African-American population in the country, a sense of history, that the long struggle to enfranchise blacks had come to this.
A lot of people laid their life down just for this right, the right to vote, the right to have a county. For them not to go into those counties and make sure that each vote was counted is outrageous. And the rest of the world was looking at this.
As George W. Bush begins his presidency, African Americans will be watching and listening with particular intensity. Many say if they'd been heard on Election Day, he wouldn't be there at all. Bill Delaney, CNN, Tallahassee, Florida.
And CNN senior political analyst Bill Schneider now with some elaboration.
Well, Bernie, the Bush campaign was simply shocked to discover on election night that they were carrying less than 10% of the African-American vote nationwide. That is worse than Bush's father did in 1988 or 1992. It is worse than Bob Dole did among African-Americans in 1996. In fact, George W. Bush, the governor of Texas, got only 5% of the African-American vote in Texas. Why did Bush do so poorly among African Americans after he made a display of his outreach to them and that he wasn't the traditional kind of Republican who had problems with African American voters? I think the answer is not so much with Bush, but with Bill Clinton, who was a hero to African American voters. They identified very closely with him in his persecutions, and Gore was Clinton's man. All of that was before the contest phase, which came about after the election. What happened then in the last 5 weeks is that somehow this turned into a civil rights issue. That's very mysterious to a lot of Americans who can't understand what this had to do with race or civil rights. But there are allegations that voting machines in minority districts in Florida were not good quality machines, and they kept a lot of blacks from voting properly. And also, Gore staked his campaign on the claim, every vote must count. That claim has a lot of resonance among African American voters. They struggled for 200 years for the right to vote. And when Gore defined his campaign as about the right to vote and to count every vote, that resonated deeply among black Americans. Bernie?
Thank you. Bill Schneider.
Well, taking a look now at some other news, the bomb-damaged USS Cole returned for repairs today to the Mississippi shipyard where it was built. A shroud covered the gaping hole in its side as it arrived atop a transport ship. The Cole was damaged in an October 12th suicide bombing in a Yemen port. It killed 17 sailors. In the stock markets, today's news about the presidential election appeared to boost blue chips moderately. At the closing bell, the Dow Industrials finished up 26 points at 10,794. On the NASDAQ, profit warnings and investment downgrades sent the composite index sliding 109 points to 2822. And to learn more about last night's United States Supreme Court decision and to talk with others about it in our chat room, we invite you to visit our website at CNN.com. Bernie?
Moneyline Update is brought to you by Fidelity. All the expertise, service, and technology to help you see yourself succeeding.
Do you remember my client, Mr. Foley? Yeah, he wanted to retire and go into teaching.
Asia Solodusky.
Pre-retire. He had a pretty substantial portfolio.
This was my first day of school.
So we worked together to restructure with the goal of providing income so he could become a teacher.
I'm loving this. I really am. I'm going to make you
Not bad, huh?
like this class. And
To invest, call, click, or visit Fidelity.
Gore should keep fighting and get the presidency. He belongs there.
And just ahead, those all-important speeches tonight from Al Gore and George W. Bush. Two experts offer their suggestions when this CNN special report returns.
No two eyes see the same world. No two businesses are identical. And now, one company creates internet solutions unique to you.
Fujitsu. The possibilities are infinite.
Now this is the fear snake, the most venomous snake in the world. One bite from him and it's all over. Yo! Oh. No worries, mate. Luckily, we've had the anti-venom sent from America via FedEx. In my line of work, if you're not absolutely sure, you're absolutely dead. Oh, crikey. It appears we've used a different courier who hasn't arrived yet. It's okay because...
Need a new look? Get the mouse. It doesn't just sand. It also scrubs, removes, and polishes. It's a whole new breed of tool. The mouse, built by Black & Decker.
Is it their impeccable timing that counts?
Their know-how. How far they go.
Or just the freedom to relax. Yes, exactly. Lufthansa, there's no better way to fly.
As you can see, the terms are good. The rate is low. There are no points.
But...
Yes?
Can't you come down a little on the interest?
It's a very good offer.
Okay, then.
Great.
Thanks, anyway. Next.
Want banks to compete over you? Come to LendingTree.com. Fill out one form and get up to 4 offers within hours. When banks compete, you win at LendingTree.com.
Bolla Wines of Italy. Open up.
It's not just the most important speech to Al Gore, it's probably one of the most important speeches in the history of our country, because what he says tonight is going to set the tone probably for the next 4 years.
Al Gore will address the nation tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, to be followed at 10 p.m. by George W. Bush. These are extremely important speeches for both men, not just in content, but in delivery as well. And joining us tonight in Washington to talk about that, former Clinton White House spokesman Joseph Lockhart. And in San Francisco, Kenneth Kachigian. He's a former speechwriter for Presidents Nixon and Reagan. Gentlemen, let's talk first about Al Gore. Joe Lockhart, you know the man pretty well. How tough is this for him tonight?
Well, this is very tough. I mean, I think he's worked most of his adult life toward the point to become president, and to have it sort of slip away in the way it has is very, very difficult. But I think overriding that is this is also an institution, the government, that he's been involved in all of his adult life and that he grew up in. And I think he understands the stakes. I think he doesn't need to be told that he has a role in moving the government forward and legitimizing this election, and I think that's what he'll do.
Ken Kachigian, from the perspective of the other side, the other team, what does Al Gore need to do tonight?
Well, oddly enough, even though it's a very hard speech to give, I think this is an easy speech to write. The American people are very generous, and I think that while they were tough on him during the contesting period, they'll be sympathetic with him right now. So he needs to understand that he should not give the stump speech, and he should not be pious about anything, but I think he should look forward. More than anything else, he should look forward. There's two audiences out there, the audience for today, the supporters who feel like this is all over with and are discouraged, but it's the audience of tomorrow, and he needs to think about that if he has a political future. I think he ought to show some humor as well. Abraham Lincoln told a great story about losing an election, and he said, reprised the story of the boy in Kentucky running to see his sweetheart who stubbed his toe, and he said, I'm too old to cry, but it hurts too much to laugh.
But Joe Lockhart, whether he shows humor and is gracious and all the rest of it, he's run a very tough campaign. Can he just drop all the points he was making during the campaign and mention none of that tonight?
No, I think that would be a disservice, both to himself and to all the people who supported him. Campaigns and politics are supposed to be about ideas and at times conflicting ideas. And so much of that has gotten lost both in this campaign and especially in this last 35, 36 days. So I think he has to pay some tribute to the people who've supported him and talk about the ideas and how the battle of ideas in politics goes on. There'll be differences between the parties, but I think the overriding point he'll have to make is that the country comes first and that this is a legitimate result.
And Ken Kachigian, if he does that, if he harks back to the ideas that he talked about during the campaign, is that going to be like rubbing salt in a wound?
No, I don't think so. I don't disagree with Joe. When I say don't give the stump speech, I think he can talk in very high-toned sense about the principles he adhered to, and I don't think he should say that he wanted the honor of the job as well, but also that there were important principles he stood for, and that I think, frankly, while he wouldn't be taking advice from me necessarily, I think he ought to set the stage if he has a political future. He can do it now by looking forward and being very generous and gracious about the day while being the warrior that he was.
In New York, guys, this may be heresy from one ex-political operative to two ex or current political operatives, but you know, Richard Nixon gave the worst, most graceless concession speech in history probably in 1962. You won't have Nixon to kick around anymore. 6 years later, he was president. Bill Clinton gave a dreadful nominating speech for Michael Dukakis. 4 years later, he was president. And his Monica Lewinsky speech was a failure, and he rode that out. Could we be putting too much emphasis in this post-oratorical age on how important a speech is to Al Gore?
Well, I think it may not be that important. I think the Bush speech, as far as where the country goes, is more important tonight. But I think for Gore, this is a very personally important moment, and he will have the stage, the country looking to him tonight. And I think he should do, I mean, he's gotten a lot of unsolicited advice today. I think he's probably rightfully ignored all of it. And I don't see this as sort of a make or break. I see it as an opportunity for him to talk about why he did what he did and you know, the intellectual underpinnings of all of that.
Ken Kachigian?
Well, you know, while I agree with the notion about the American public overlooking Richard Nixon's last press conference, the fact is they still remember it and they still refer to it. I think Al Gore has the opportunity tonight to give a speech that people will just remember in only positive ways. And we do have short memories in this country, but we do have memories.
All right, Ken Kachigian, Joe Lockhart, and we'll be talking to you all in the next hour after we hear from the Vice President to look ahead to the speech from George W. Bush. We're going to take a break in our special coverage as we are just minutes away, 5 minutes away from the address by Al Gore. We'll be right back.
Closed captioning provided by USSearch.com. Find out if anyone you know has a criminal record. One of over 50 information products now available at USSearch.com.
Join Bill Press and Tucker Carlson in the Spin Room by phone, chat room, or email. Tonight at a special time, midnight Eastern on CNN.
What's the smart way to save money on your next electrical installation? Call the skilled professionals of the NECA and IBEW Local 48. We deliver jobs on time, on budget, and done right the first time. Don't cut corners with your reputation. When you need the job done right, call the experts of NECA and IBEW Local 48, the most cost-effective electrical contractors in the business. Hire the NECA IBEW team. We do more.
Can Jefferson defend its title? Come on, y'all. The Les Schwab Invitational is serving up high school hoop action at its best. December 20th through 23rd at Portland's Memorial Coliseum. Tickets at all Ticketmaster outlets. Only the best will survive.
I may be frugal, but I am not cheap. I mean, I like to get the most for my money. So when I heard about AT&T digital cable, my first question, how much? Well, it turns out they have a variety of digital cable packages. And you know what? One of them turned out to be perfect for me. I got a much better value than anybody else had to offer. Hey, I know a great deal when I see one. And now I get to see one every time I turn on my TV.
Call now to order the digital cable package that's right for you.
Get to the bottom of the day's issues with Greta Van Susteren, weeknights at 8:30 on CNN.
I believe that we will come together and rally behind Bush. I think that shadow of doubt will always be cast over that, but we'll come together.
At the top of the hour, Vice President Al Gore will step before the cameras to deliver an address to the nation. That will be followed by CNN's Larry King Live. He joins us now. Larry.
Thanks, Bernie and Judy. We're going to have two editions of Larry King Live tonight. Following the Gore speech, we'll be talking with former Senator Sam Nunn and Bob Strauss, the former DNC chairman, and Senators Hatch and Breaux and McCain and Lawrence Tribe, Bob Woodward and Norm Ornstein. And then following the speech by Governor George W. Bush, we'll have Bob Dole and Jesse Jackson and Barry Richard and Bob Woodward and our own Jeff Greenfield. Lots of wrap-ups coming. So we'll have two editions of Larry King Live. The first one follows the address ahead. Bernie, Judy?
Thank you, Larry. And as we await the address, CNN has learned that Vice President Al Gore has telephoned Texas Governor George W. Bush to say that he is withdrawing from this race.
That phone call, Bernie, the second time in 36 days that a call of concession, if you want to call it that. Of course, we don't know what words the vice president used. He made the call early in the morning hours of November the 8th, but then an hour and so later, he called back and said, I'm going to have to take that back because the votes coming in from the state of Florida are very close, and I'm not ready to concede after all. So here we are 36 days later.
Bill, Jeff, in a word, what will you be listening for tonight?
I want to see if
Tone.
George Bush... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Tone, you say, Jeff?
I'm going to be listening for tone. I'm going to be listening for whether or not the Al Gore, who we've heard about so often from his friends and colleagues, who can be funny and eloquent in private, so often seems less than that in public. And I'm going to see whether or not he can acknowledge, as Ken Kachikian said, a certain sense of hurt. I mean, a man who at 7:50 on the night of November 7th thought he'd won the White House, who then at 2:18 in the morning was told he had lost it, then 3 different times his candidacy seemed to be revived by votes in Florida, perhaps, by the Florida Supreme Court, and then through 36 days of this to be told, guess what, it was what you thought happened at 2 o'clock in the morning on November 8th is still true, you have lost, whether he can at least acknowledge to us that there is some personal pain in all this.
Well, you know, we asked people around the country what they thought of the Supreme Court's decision, and what we found was that a majority of Americans, but only a bare majority, agrees with what the Supreme Court did, and that follows the vote very closely. Did this make people lose confidence in the United States Supreme Court? 2/3 of Americans said no, it did not. But in the speech we're just about to hear, the question is, should Al Gore concede that he lost the election, or should he withdraw from the race without conceding? By 2-1, Americans say he should concede that he lost the election. But among Democrats, there's a very close division on that issue.
This is the ceremonial office, and Judy, we understand that Tipper Gore and their children are there, as well as the Liebermans and their daughter.
24 years after entering public office, Al Gore Jr. prepares to leave public office. The Vice President of the United States.
Good evening. Just moments ago, I spoke with George W. Bush and congratulated him on becoming the 43rd President of the United States. And I promised him that I wouldn't call him back this time. I offered to meet with him as soon as possible so that we can start to heal the divisions of the campaign and the contest through which we've just passed. Almost a century and a half ago, Senator Stephen Douglas told Abraham Lincoln, who had just defeated him for the presidency, partisan feeling must yield to patriotism. I'm with you, Mr. President, and God bless you. Well, in that same spirit, I say to President-elect Bush that what remains of partisan rancor must now be put aside, and may God bless his stewardship of this country. Neither he nor I anticipated this long and difficult road. Certainly neither of us wanted it to happen. Yet it came, and now it has ended, resolved as it must be resolved through the honored institutions of our democracy. Over the library of one of our great law schools is inscribed the motto, not under man, but under God and law. That's the ruling principle of American freedom, the source of our democratic liberties. I've tried to make it my guide throughout this contest, as it has guided America's deliberations of all the complex issues of the past 5 weeks. Now the U.S. Supreme Court has spoken. Let there be no doubt, while I strongly disagree with the court's decision, I accept it. I accept the finality of this outcome, which will be ratified next Monday in the Electoral College. And tonight, for the sake of our unity as a people and the strength of our democracy, I offer my concession. I also accept my responsibility, which I will discharge unconditionally, to honor the new president-elect and do everything possible to help him bring Americans together in fulfillment of the great vision that our Declaration of Independence defines and that our Constitution affirms and defends. Let me say how grateful I am to all those who supported me and supported the cause for which we have fought. Tipper and I feel a deep gratitude to Joe and Hadassah Lieberman, who brought passion and high purpose to our partnership and opened new doors, not just for our campaign, but for our country. This has been an extraordinary election, but in one of God's unforeseen paths, this belatedly broken impasse can point us all to a new common ground, for its very closeness can serve to remind us that we are one people with a shared history and a shared destiny. Indeed, that history gives us many examples of contests as hotly debated, as fiercely fought, with their own challenges to the popular will. Other disputes have dragged on for weeks before reaching resolution, and each time both the victor and the vanquished have accepted the result peacefully and in a spirit of reconciliation. So let it be with us. I know that many of my supporters are disappointed. I am too. But our disappointment must be overcome by our love of country. And I say to our fellow members of the world community, let no one see this contest as a sign of American weakness. The strength of American democracy is shown most clearly through the difficulties it can overcome. Some have expressed concern that the unusual nature of this election might hamper the next president in the conduct of his office. I do not believe it need be so. President-elect Bush inherits a nation whose citizens will be ready to assist him in the conduct of his large responsibilities. I personally will be at his disposal, and I call on all Americans. I particularly urge all who stood with us to unite behind our next president. This is America. Just as we fight hard when the stakes are high, we close ranks and come together when the contest is done. And while there will be time enough to debate our continuing differences, now is the time to recognize that that which unites us is greater than that which divides us. While we yet hold and do not yield our opposing beliefs, there is a higher duty than the one we owe to political party. This is America, and we put country before party. We will stand together behind our new president. As for what I'll do next, I don't know the answer to that one yet. Like many of you, I'm looking forward to spending the holidays with family and old friends. I know I'll spend time in Tennessee and mend some fences, literally and figuratively. Some have asked whether I have any regrets, and I do have one regret, that I didn't get the chance to stay and fight for the American people over the next 4 years, especially for those who need burdens lifted and barriers removed, especially for those who feel their voices have not been heard. I heard you, and I will not forget. I've seen America in this campaign, and I like what I see. It's worth fighting for, and that's a fight I'll never stop. As for the battle that ends tonight, I do believe, as my father once said, that no matter how hard the loss, defeat may serve as well as victory to shake the soul and let the glory out. So for me, this campaign ends as it began, with the love of Tipper and our family, with faith in God and in the country I have been so proud to serve, from Vietnam to the vice presidency, and with gratitude to our truly tireless campaign staff and volunteers, including all those who worked so hard in Florida for the last 36 days. Now the political struggle is over, and we turn again to the unending struggle for the common good of all Americans and for those multitudes around the world who look to us for leadership in the cause of freedom. In the words of our great hymn, America, America, let us crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. And now, my friends, in a phrase I once addressed to others, it's time for me to go. Thank you, and good night, and God bless America.
With brevity, Vice President Al Gore describing how he feels. He said, now the United States Supreme Court has spoken. Let there be no doubt. While I strongly disagree with the court's decision, I accept it. Prior to beginning his remarks, he said he called Governor Bush and congratulated him. And he used the C word. I offer my concession. And the Vice President promised to be personally at the disposal, at the new President-elect's disposal, and he called on all Americans to unite behind our next president.
Bernie, he, as you say, it was a concession. He did acknowledge disappointment, a little bit of humor, but Jeff Greenfield, there also was a word to those people. He said he's sorry he won't get a chance to fight for. He said those especially who feel their voices have not heard. He said, I heard you, and I will not forget.
Yes, I think there are a couple of interesting notes in that. One is that there were, on 3 occasions, there were very graceful bits of humor appropriate to the occasion. When he said, I called Governor Bush and I promised him I wouldn't call him back this time, a reference to that retracted concession phone call. When he said, I'm going to go back to Tennessee and mend some fences, literally and figuratively, that was a nice way of referring to what John King told us earlier, a real sense of regret that he failed to carry his own state, which would have given him the presidency. And at the very end, instead of reaching for very high-flown rhetoric, he quoted a line of his from his 1992 vice presidential acceptance speech aimed at Republicans. It's time for them to go. And he said, it's time for me to go. And I thought that, you know, there was not a trace of bitterness in this speech. It was, I think, actually a more low-key and personal rhetoric than we heard from him a lot during the campaign. A very nice set of touches here.
John King, one of the touches I heard, majesty.
A bit of majesty. Bernie, this vice president, not known for his rhetorical skills. Here, a very delicate balance to bestow legitimacy on a man he was first to call president-elect in an official capacity, George W. Bush, but also a way for the vice president, as Jeff mentioned, to jokingly say, it's time for me to go, but to also leave the suggestion that perhaps he might be back in some capacity. Will he run again? He said he doesn't know. He wants to take a vacation with his family. But what did he say? There will be time enough to debate our continuing differences. They're not all settled, even as he hands off and promises to cooperate with Governor Bush. And he said he will remember those he regrets that he won't be here to fight for, especially for those who need burdens lifted and barriers removed, especially for those who feel their voices have not been heard. Translation, perhaps their votes not counted. Bernie?
Thank you.
And Candy Crowley, listening to all this in Austin, Texas, where Governor Bush is, we heard Al Gore say in that same spirit, he said, I say to President-elect Bush that what remains of partisan rancor must now be put aside.
It is hard to imagine that the Bush campaign at this point, when certainly feelings are still raw, this must have been an extremely difficult speech for the vice president. Hard to imagine the Bush campaign could have expected much more. It was a generous speech, and it was really a very clear speech. There was a discussion about whether he would use the word concession, about you know, perhaps he would at the last minute say something that left you wondering. There was no wondering about this. He called on his supporters to put aside the partisan rancor. Just a little bit of news in terms of that phone call. I'm told it lasted less than 2 minutes. From the Bush team point of view, the governor thought it was a very gracious phone call from Al Gore. The two will meet on Tuesday in Washington, I am told, and agreed to that. The governor said he was very glad for that hospitality. So the two face-to-face on Tuesday. Judy?
All right, Candy Crowley in Austin. Bill Schneider's here with us in the Washington studio. What did you hear, Bill?
Well, I heard an irony when he said, he jokingly at the end, it's time for me to go. When he made that speech as vice president nominee at the Democratic Convention in 1992, the people whom he said about it's time for them to go was President Bush, George Bush's father. So in a way, events have come full circle. I also heard him say the word that he used throughout this campaign over and over again, fighting. He always called himself a fighter. He said, I didn't get the chance to stay and fight. This is worth fighting for, and it's a fight I'll never stop. He fought for this. He fought throughout the campaign. He fought after the campaign, and the message is clear. He intends to keep on fighting. He went down fighting.
As we've said, Al Gore is the 4th presidential candidate to have won the popular vote but lost the election. Out of more than 100 million votes cast on Election Day, Al Gore won 50,158,094. George W. Bush won 49,820,518. Gore led the Texas governor by more than 300,000 votes.
George W. Bush is the first person to win the presidency despite losing both New York and California, the two states with the largest number of electoral votes. But it was Florida that became the focal point of this election. After a flurry of lawsuits, recounts, and Florida's legislature stepping in, it was Bush who finally grabbed that state's 25 electoral votes. So the final tally, Bush 271 to Al Gore 267. And now we turn our coverage of this historic evening over to CNN's Larry King. Larry.
Judy, thank you, Bernie. We'll be with you for 2 segments. There'll be 2 editions of Larry King Live tonight, this one, and then following the President-elect speech, President-elect George W. Bush of Texas will follow that with another Larry King Live. And we started off with 2 major names on the American scene. They're both in our Washington, D.C. bureau. They are Sam Nunn, the former senator from Georgia, who served as chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and Robert Strauss, always good to see Bob, the former chairman of the DNC. He was the Middle East peace negotiator. He served the Bush administration as well as ambassador to the Soviet Union and later to Russia in 91 and 92. Senator Nunn, what did you make of Gore's speech?
I think anyone who criticizes that speech must have a measurement of perfection, because I thought it was a very fine speech. I thought he did everything that could have been expected of him. I thought he did it with style and with humor, and I thought that he, most importantly, did everything that he could do in this setting to convey legitimacy on President-elect George W. Bush.
Ambassador Strauss, your thoughts?
I thought he was not just good, I thought he was very good. I share Sam's view. I thought he was gracious. I thought he sounded real. I thought he sounded, set the tone that America wanted to have him set. He spoke of the future, not the past. I thought he did real good.
Senator Nunn, of that kind of attitude, there'll always be some who say, boy, he should have showed that more during the campaign. Do you agree, or is that unfair?
Well, I'm sure that it's difficult in a campaign. You're in a different setting, you're in a different set of circumstances. It would have certainly gone down as a great kind of a message, but only in these circumstances. And I think it would have been hard to duplicate in a campaign. I think that Al Gore, when people know him personally, he does have much more of a sense of humor than is displayed sometimes, but frankly, I think he rose to the occasion tonight when it had to be the most difficult speech he's had to make, barring none in the campaign. It's tough when you go through what he's gone through, and his family and what they've gone through, and his key supporters, so he is a fighter, and this was a time he rose to the occasion.
And Ambassador Strauss, do you think those who followed him in this long trek will come aboard and end the kind of anger we've seen the past 5 weeks?
I think we have a tendency, Larry, in this country, a great tendency to overreact and overstate everything. And while this country's been divided, and while certainly we were split 50-50 in this election, I think it's a bit overdrawn how difficult it is to put it back together. And I think that I think it will come together, and I think it'll come together towards the center. I think that the president-elect has his strengths and his weaknesses, and one of his strengths has been his ability to work with people and reach out and attract people. I suspect he will start doing that tonight when he goes on tonight, and he'll continue, and he'll do it well.
Speaking of attracting people, Senator Nunn, it's been rumored that you are one of those Democrats that President-elect Bush will be very interested in, possibly for Secretary of Defense. Are you interested?
I haven't had any conversation with President-elect Bush about that subject, and I have made it clear that I want to stay in private life. I do not have interest in going back into government, but I've also made it clear that I would join with others like Bob Strauss and Howard Baker and Jack Danforth and Warren Rudman and David Boren and a lot of other people I could name who've been in government to do everything we can to help the President-elect from my private sector position. And that means advice. It means doing all I can to get the Democratic leadership and the Democratic Party to understand and make clear to the American people explicitly that they believe this president deserves our support, deserves our prayers. He is our president, and we can have only one leader, and I think we all, Democrats and Republicans, need to put citizenship ahead of partisanship.
Ambassador Strauss, do you expect to see Democrats in this cabinet?
Yes, I think there'll be Democrats in this cabinet. I know that the Bush people intend to reach out and try to attract Democrats. I hope they're able to do that, to get people who are articulate and who have strong feelings and who can work with others and get that kind of person in. I think, as for me, you didn't ask me the same question you did Sam, but when I mature a bit and get a little age on me, I might consider going back into government. But for the time being, I'm going to stay out.
What we're viewing now, as Ambassador Strauss was speaking, is Al Gore leaving the Eisenhower Executive Building and about to leave and heading back to the Vice President's home. We're talking with Sam Nunn and Robert Strauss in edition number 1 of Larry King Live. There will be another one following the Bush speech at 10 o'clock. Senator Nunn, what's the future for Al Gore?
I believe that with the speech he made tonight, if he has ambitions to get back into politics at some point in the future and run another race, he'll have a lot of support. No one can predict the future, and I certainly would not do that tonight. But he is clearly a fighter, and he clearly has public service and public policy in the depths of his soul, and his family does also. So if he wants to run again, I think he'll have a lot of support out there.
And how, you said, Ambassador Strauss, you expect healing. Do you expect that largely to be up to the President-elect? Is he the one that has to bring it together?
I think he has to take the lead in it, and and I expect him to do so, and I think the people will follow. He may have trouble with the extremes in his own party as well as the extremes in our party, but the public generally is tired of confrontation, and they're ready for reconciliation and for people to work together. And I suspect that the President-elect will, as he reaches out, will find Democrats and Republicans, the moderates in that group, prepared to rally around and work with him. Interestingly, there have been about 30 members of the U.S. Senate, I think about 2/3 Democrat and 1/3 Republican, who've been meeting and working together and talking, discussing issues in common, just finding out just how much they have in common and how little they have apart on many of these issues. That's a constructive, good start.
Will moderation, Senator Nunn, be the rule of the day, you think?
I think so, and I think what Bob has said is exactly right. I believe that the President-elect has the ability and the inclination to work from the center. If he had had a runaway victory, he probably couldn't have done that. His own party would have demanded a degree of philosophical rigidity that would not have allowed him flexibility. I think he's got more flexibility in some paradoxical way now because he's got to govern from the center. Everybody that looks at the reality of the 50-50 Senate and the closed House realizes that, and he can move from the center to the outward rather than from the fringes toward the center. I think that's enormously important and gives him a chance to do what he may very well have an inclination to do anyway.
And Ambassador Strauss, as we see Vice President Gore leave after making his speech tonight to the plaudits of his followers, we asked Senator Nunn, what do you think of Al Gore's future?
Well, I think Al Gore has, interestingly, while he sometimes has fallen short in his public appearances, he seems to have the ability to rise to the occasion when crisis comes, and I thought tonight was a key time for him. I thought he did more than rise to the occasion, and in doing so, I think the future is open to what he can do. It's hard to predict, but he certainly can't be written off, that's for sure, not after tonight.
What do you think is going to be the first issue on deck, Senator Nunn?
In terms of the new president's administration, I would think that education would be right up front. I think that's a subject that the president-elect is comfortable with. I think he's been a leader in that arena in his own state. I think he's put together bipartisan coalitions in his own state on that, and I think he will find a receptive audience given his dedication toward education. I also think he can tackle some of the tough issues. Strangely enough, you may be able to tackle tough issues that other people would have not dreamed of with a divided Senate if you can put together the kind of coalition that Bob Strauss has alluded to. Issues like Social Security reform and Medicare reform, I think those are important. I think you can put together a coalition on trade. I believe that you may have a better chance to do that. And most importantly, I also think you can begin to do as former Senator David Boren penned this week in the Washington Post, and that is put together a leadership council on both foreign policy and a separate one on economic policy with Democrats and Republicans. That's something that I felt was in order for a long time on foreign policy, and now I think he has a clear chance of doing that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sam Nunn. Thank you, Bob Strauss. And as you see, the people applauding outside the Eisenhower Executive Office building in Washington, applauding Vice President Al Gore and Senator Joe Lieberman. They're both in that building. And we are expecting, and there you see him now, as Al Gore leaves. A lot of people out on a cold night in Washington to bid him good wishes. He spoke for about 7 minutes. And again, Governor Bush, the president-elect, will be speaking about 37 minutes from now. You'll see that. And we'll be back with another edition of Larry King Live. When we come back, Senator Orrin Hatch and Senator John Breaux, two powerful members of the United States Senate. Senator Hatch is the chair of the Judiciary Committee, a committee that Al Gore once sat on, will be our guest as Al Gore now leaves and heads back to the vice presidential residence. Said, we're not seeing the end of the political life here tonight. This is a very young man, and Ambassador Strauss says, with a unique ability to, in his career, bounce back. First most difficult task of his life was when his father, the late senator, spoke out against the war in Vietnam. Al Gore thought it would be best if he would go to the service and go to that war to help his father. His father would subsequently lose that election. There's Tipper Gore right in front. Sometimes in defeat, people gain more popularity, and apparently that is happening to Al Gore tonight. And I think it'd be safe to say that that speech will be heralded tomorrow, even by his severest critics during this campaign, as a gracious, classy, at times funny, timely concession speech. Chanting something, I can't hear it. They're saying Gore in 4, I am told, meaning Al come back in 4 years to run again. He's in the car, waving goodbye, and as he waves goodbye, we'll take a break. And then come back with Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah, Senator John Breaux of Louisiana. This is Larry King Live, Part 1. Don't go away.
Larry King Live is brought to you by Citracal. Do what's right for your bones. Take Citracal.
It's about absorption, staying strong, and getting the most out of your calcium supplement. It's about the Citracal difference. In a recent study of leading brands of calcium, Citracal was better absorbed. So do what's right for your bones. Take Citracal.
This is all the information on your site. The content is up to you. Blue Martini software allows you to share any of it or all of it freely with resellers, brokers, partners, anyone who can use that information to sell your product. They're happy because their site is easier to take care of. You're happy because your message is everywhere.
Lots of people want lots of information some of the time, but not everyone. Some just want general news about yesterday. A few need business news about today. But energy professionals need energy news now, in real time. Introducing Williams, EnergyNewsLive.com, the only real-time energy news network. It's not news for everyone, just everyone in energy.
What's the word I'm thinking of?
Is it no?
No.
No.
Okie doke.
Whoa.
No.
Want banks to compete over you? At LendingTree, fill out one simple form and get up to 4 offers.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
When banks compete, you win at LendingTree.com.
Beginning Monday, a dynamic new hour on CNN. At 8, Wolf Blitzer reports on the day's big stories on location, featuring the best of CNN's reporting, and Wolf going one-on-one with key newsmakers. At 8:30, get to the point with Greta Van Susteren as she takes on important issues, in-depth, in her own feisty style, to explain the problem and explore solutions in a way we can all understand. Wolf Blitzer and Greta Van Susteren, beginning Monday at 8 Eastern on CNN.
We're back, and we now welcome to Larry King Live Part 1, Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah, Senator John Breaux of Louisiana. Senator Hatch, a member of the opposition to the candidacy of Vice President Gore. What did you make of his speech?
I wish I could write a speech like that. It had humor, it had humility, it had, I think it had spirituality, and frankly, it was a very good speech. We've been very fortunate to have 4 really fine men running in this race for president. No matter who won, we were going to get good people. And 4 really fine wives and families. I just have to commend them all. And I commend Vice President Gore. I thought that was a very, very eloquent speech. It meant a lot to, I think, this country. And he called for all of us to unite behind President-elect Bush. And it was gracious. It was just about everything I think it should have been.
Senator Breaux, did it surprise you?
Larry, it did not surprise me. A concession speech is the hardest speech that a political candidate can ever give. A victory speech is a lot easier and it's a lot more fun to give. But a concession speech is about who you are. A concession speech is about your character. It's about what you're really made of. And I think tonight we saw an Al Gore who has devoted his life to public service see that political life ending, at least for the time being. Yet he was eloquent. He was gracious. He was very helpful to this country, and I think he was particularly helpful to President-elect George Bush.
And do you think, Senator Hatch, all this talk of bipartisanship and this kind of mood can continue?
Well, I think it has to continue. The American people are tired of this rancor that's been existing in Washington. It's time really to change it, and I think people like John Breaux and myself, we can get together and a whole raft of others who are looking forward to trying to do what's right for this country. I think we've got to do it. But let me tell you something. We can't let the fringe elements in either party dictate what goes on here. We've got to heal our land. I think that's what Vice President Gore was calling about. He talked about burdens lifted and barriers removed. I think George W. Bush has a reputation for lifting burdens and removing barriers, and I think he's going to do a great job as a Republican and as somebody who will work with both parties to do exactly that. And we're going to help him. I got to tell you, we're going to help him.
Senator Breaux, does President-elect Bush get a honeymoon?
Well, I think Al Gore has talked about the fact that it's time, Larry, to quit arguing about the past and now time to start talking about the future. And I think that in the Senate, even though it's 50-50, it's a rare opportunity as far as I'm concerned. We're going to work together whether we like to or not. I mean, bipartisanship is not going to be political theory. It's going to be a political necessity. We've already reinvigorated our centrist coalition in the Senate. Our first meeting had almost 30 members of the United States Senate, Republicans and Democrats, who sat in the same room, talked to each other, and made a commitment to work together for the good of this country. I think that's new, it's exciting, and I think it's very, very promising.
Why this sudden, Senator Hatch, turnaround from the partisanship of yesterday?
Well, I think we all know with a 50-50 basic split in the presidential race, 50-50 split in the Senate, almost a 50-50 split in the House, we've got to work together. We can't get anything done without working together. I was happy to see those 2 great Democrats, Sam Nunn and Ambassador Strauss. And I'm glad to hear that Ambassador Strauss is maturing so that maybe he can help us in this administration. I hope Sam can too. But we've got to work together. If we don't work together, we're not doing what's right for this country. And I think this is a great opportunity. This is not an impasse situation. This is an opportunity to make a difference in our country in ways that haven't been made up till now. And I'll tell you, I'm prepared to link arms with John Breaux and others and get this done.
Senator Breaux, would you be interested in serving in this administration?
Larry, I am very, very happy serving in the United States Senate. I mean, what a challenge to be in a legislative body that is literally tied with a 50-50 vote. That's where I think the action is going to be. I'm certainly willing to talk to President-elect Bush if he would want to do that. I mean, that would certainly be something I think anyone would owe it to a new president to speak with them. But I can tell you that I think the action and the excitement is going to be in the United States Senate. And I think what is different this time is that essentially we've had a tie election. I mean, the election for the presidency was almost a tie. The Senate, in fact, is tied. The House of Representatives is almost a tie. And the message from the American people is not a policy directive, but rather a message for us to get our own house together and to start working together for the good of this country.
Yeah. Senators Orrin Hatch and John Breaux, and by the way, they both will be back following the speech by President-elect Governor George W. Bush of Texas. That's coming up at the top of the hour when we have part 2 of Larry King Live. We'll take a break, and when we come back, Senator John McCain, who's had a battle or two this year, gives us his thoughts tonight. Don't go away.
Join Bill Press and Tucker Carlson in the Spin Room by phone, chat room, or email. Tonight at a special time, midnight Eastern on CNN.
The 300-horsepower Lincoln Navigator, built to set you free. Now with a liberating lease offer at your Lincoln dealer. Lincoln, American luxury.
Named Best Pick by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. Come experience the M-Class at Valley Motor Company in Salem.
Get to the bottom of the day's issues with Greta Van Susteren, weeknights at 8:30 on CNN.
Your call will be answered by the next available operator. Please stand by.
Your service reps are overwhelmed with customer calls, faxes, and emails. Integrate the internet into your call center and go from providing customer support to creating customer delight. Discover all that's possible on the internet. Cisco Systems, empowering the internet generation.
Need extra cash for the holidays? Don't charge it on your credit cards. Get a second mortgage with no closing costs from Ditech.com. With a second mortgage, you can consolidate all your existing high-interest debts, get the cash you need for the holidays, and end up with one lower monthly payment. A second mortgage with no closing cost is smart money from Ditech.com. Log on now for fast online approval or call us at 1-800-71-FIXED.
Only Hilton Honors rewards guests with both hotel points and airline miles. And now, the Hilton Honors family has grown to include places like Hampton Inn and Homewood Suites by Hilton. Introducing the new Hilton Honors family. Over 2,000 hotels and resorts where you'll receive both points and miles for the very same stay. Come, discover just how rewarding and can be. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Larry King Live, and you now see President-elect George W. Bush. That's his limousine taking him to the House chamber of the Texas legislature in the distinguished, beautiful building. We were there recently in Austin, Texas. He will deliver his speech coming up in about 22 minutes from the House chamber. That's President-elect George W. Bush, who will address the nation shortly. And as we see this, let's check in with a former opponent of Governor Bush, Senator John McCain, Republican of Arizona, coming to us from Phoenix. I know throughout all of this, as you supported Governor Bush, you always told us how much you liked Vice President Gore. What did you think of him tonight?
I've never seen him better. You're right. He and I served together in the House together, and we've worked together for many years. I've never seen him look better, and his speech has struck exactly the right tone, and I think that this will set the stage for Governor Bush's speech, which I'm sure will be equally as magnanimous, and it'll put the country off on the right footing and on the right track.
Now we see President-elect Bush. We see, I think that's Lynn Cheney, the wife of Vice President-elect Dick Cheney, and of course Laura Bush, No, that's not, looks like Lynn Cheney, but it's not Lynn Cheney. But that's Laura Bush, the wife of President-elect George Bush. Senator McCain, do you share all this optimism that everyone is showing tonight about a coming together?
I do, but it's guarded. I think it's we're headed in the right direction, and I'm confident of Governor Bush's performance tonight will be equal to that of the Vice President's. But then we've got to sit down and we've got to settle on an agenda that we can agree on, and campaign finance reform has got to be the first one. It should be a bipartisan effort. We need to clean up this system, restore young Americans' confidence in government, and there's no better way than to do that. And then we need to set out on the rest of a reform agenda so we can reconnect the American people. All the ingredients are there. The question is will we be able to negotiate and come up with a proper agenda? And I think we can, but it's not going to be a day at the beach.
Would you include Senator McCain in that list, election reform?
Absolutely, but I would remind you that the fundraising begins before the election. So I think we ought to reform the fundraising first as well. But clearly we need to provide money for lower income municipalities and counties in order for them to have the same level of technology that wealthier areas do, so that every American has the same confidence that their vote will be counted in a fair and equal fashion. We need to do whatever we can to make sure that there's some uniformity in some of the other laws, but providing them with the assistance to upgrade their capabilities. Look, if you're a poor small town and you got $2 million, what do you spend it on? Build a new school or buy new voting machines? I think the answer is obvious. We need to help them out there.
You keep coming back to campaign finance reform.
Mm-hmm.
You don't expect President-elect Bush, though, to make that #1 on his agenda, do you?
Well, I hope he will. I think we could take it up immediately before the Bush legislative agenda is prepared, and we could dispense with it in 2 or 3 weeks, and we could set in a bipartisan fashion, and we could clean that up. And I intend to work very hard for President Bush's agenda. I hope he will work on this one with me. I promised millions of Americans, Larry, that I would do everything in my power to implement campaign finance reform and give them back their government, which is taken by the big moneyed special interests, and I don't intend to give up that agenda.
We're going to spend some more moments with Senator John McCain of Arizona, and then meet Lawrence Tribe, who unsuccessfully argued this case first time for the Supreme Court, and then check in with Pulitzer Prize winner Bob Woodward and Norm Ornstein, and then we'll hear from President-elect Bush. Right back with Senator John McCain after this.
Tired of juggling investments? Introducing the Orange CD from ING Direct. At 7.5% APY, it's the highest one-year CD rate available. There's no minimum deposit, and it's FDIC insured. Call 1-800-ING Direct.
What counts in a mutual fund? Performance counts. The Kaufman Fund has consistently delivered. 10-year, 5-year, 1 year. What counts in a mutual fund? Experience counts. Kaufman Fund managers Lawrence Oriana and Hans Such combine over 70 years of experience. Performance, experience. The Kaufman Fund finding outstanding investment values for the aggressive portion of your portfolio. Call now for your free prospectus. 800-796-9334.
What would you do with a crystal face able to withstand 2 tons of unadulterated pressure? Or a tachymetric scale so precise it can survive 240-degree heat? What would you do with the world-renowned Alpha Expedition timepiece?
Well, you'd probably just use it to tell time. And at $6,500, that watch could cost you over $30,000 in retirement savings. We just thought you should know. Ask a financial advisor about Sun America, the retirement specialist.
Our company needed managed internet solutions. PSINet delivered.
We needed managed web hosting. PSINet fit the bill.
I wanted multi-currency e-commerce. PSINet was there in over 160 currencies.
We needed transaction solutions. PSINet executed to specifications on time.
Simply put, I needed everything, and PSINet gave it to me.
Your business internet opportunity is knocking. Open the door. Call or contact us today.
Tired of juggling investments? Introducing the Orange CD from ING Direct. At 7.5% APY, it's the highest one-year CD rate available. There's no minimum deposit, and it's FDIC insured. Call 1-800-ING Direct.
Having a little satellite problem with Senator John McCain. As soon as we correct it, we'll get back to him. Let's get down to Miami, check in with Lawrence Tribe, the famed appellate attorney who argued the first time before the United States Supreme Court. What did you make of that ruling last night?
Well, it was obviously a disappointment, but I so much applaud the spirit of what the Vice President did this evening, which was to acknowledge that he thought the ruling was wrong, as I do, but to waste no time spilling tears over it, and instead to put all of his energy toward helping to unify the nation. And in your discussion with Senator McCain, what struck me in part was the reference to election reform. We've talked a lot about campaign reform, but one thing we've surely learned through this whole episode, an episode that I'm extremely proud to have been a part of, even though in the end it didn't succeed, is that we really need to take seriously the idea that every person's vote counts. And that really does mean better equipment and better methods of tabulating votes in poorer areas. It means using 21st century technology instead of punch hole ballots and chads and butterflies. And I think if we take that seriously, and if we encourage voting and make it easier, and make sure that we don't simply fail to count people's votes, we will have made great progress, and this whole episode will have helped to advance the cause of justice and democracy.
Might we also need, Professor Tribe, more clarity in the legislative laws dealing with things like this?
Well, I think it helps, but I think it's an illusion to imagine that any legislature can see into the future and make sure that there are no ambiguities in what it writes and no conflicts. We will always have to rely on judges to reconcile those ambiguities the way I believe the Florida Supreme Court did. And we will always, I think, have to realize that the judicial process, even when we disagree with it, even when it's divided 5-4, is our surest path toward making a real basis for the rule of law to reinforce a constitutional democracy.
Well stated by one of our brilliant minds. Thank you, Professor Tribe. Now we've connected our satellite back into Phoenix with Senator John McCain. Senator, what do you think the future of Al Gore is?
I think he probably will have some competition. We've got Mrs. Clinton, obviously, as a very big figure in American politics. You've got Tom Daschle and Dick Gephardt, as well as others. So I think he may have some competition, but I think he frankly helped himself a lot tonight because I think Republicans and Democrats and independents were very impressed with his exit.
Would you want to leave the Senate if offered an appointment in this administration?
I would prefer not to, Larry. I think I have an agenda that I'd like to pursue and can most effectively pursue in the Senate.
Are you going to have a tough time since a lot of Republicans oppose your agenda? I mean, you know that going in, and you got a split Senate to begin with. Is it tougher this time?
I think it's easier. A number of the people who are defeated were opposed to campaign finance reform, and a number who have been elected are in favor of it. We have 60 votes now, Larry, so we can cut off debate, and that changes the entire dynamics. And again, I have every reason to believe that Governor Bush will work with us on this issue. I know that he knows that there are things that are badly wrong. And when you look at the incredible flow of money in this last election and all the negative ads and the so-called independent campaigns, that the time is right now to reform this system, as well as the fact that one of the reasons why we were gridlocked so heavily in the Congress is because the influence of the special interests which dictate the legislative agenda, which is tragic.
You expect a very good address in about 8 minutes?
I'm sure we will. I'm convinced we will. And again, as been mentioned before, Governor Bush has a clear record of reaching across the aisle. I'm sure he will do that this time, and I think that the center holds in American politics more than ever before, and he will govern from the center.
Thank you, John. Always good seeing you.
Thank you, Larry.
Senator John McCain. When we come back, we'll get the thoughts of Bob Woodward, the Pulitzer Prize winner, and the resident scholar of the American Enterprise Institute, Norm Ornstein. And we'll send you back for the speech by President-elect George W. Bush, and then we'll follow with part 2 of Larry King Live. Among the guests, Senator Bob Dole. Don't go away.
Between the travel and the tedium, training programs can cost real leaps in productivity. Go from training downtime to learning online, anytime, anywhere. Discover all that's possible on the internet. Cisco Systems, empowering the internet generation.
Leave the city behind. Leave everything behind. The 240 horsepower Infiniti QX4. Imagine the ultimate luxury vehicle. We have.
Around the world, mothers want to protect and nourish their children. So biotechnology researchers have developed golden rice. It will contain beta-carotene, a source of vitamin A. Golden rice could help prevent blindness and infection in millions of children. From medicine to agriculture, biotechnology is providing solutions that are improving lives today and could improve our world tomorrow.
What's the spin on the show that's got everyone talking?
Political talk of the frat boy variety.
Get real.
One of CNN's brightest new shows.
That's the ticket.
The Spin Room with odd couple Bill Press and Tucker Carlson. Debating today's top stories, exchanging barbs, and most importantly,
taking your calls, emails, and chat room comments.
And giving you a chance to voice your opinion.
Check out The Spin Room tonight on CNN.
Now let's get some thoughts from Bob Woodward, the assistant managing editor of the Washington Post and author of the bestseller Maestro, the Greenspans Fed and the American Dream, and Norm Ornstein, resident scholar, American Enterprise Institute. Norm, we'll start with you. What did you make of the Gore speech?
Oh, it was a perfectly toned and delivered speech, Larry. I mean, he was relaxed and did a terrific job. It will serve him well, whatever he does, although I'm not at all sure that he will start to resume a political career for quite a while.
Bob, did it surprise you at all?
Well, I think what Gore was really saying there was, I refuse to be a tragic figure. I'm going on with my life. I think on a scale of 0 to 10, it really was a 10. There was a lot of extra stuff in that speech. Not only did he refer to Bush as President-elect Bush once, he did it twice. On the Supreme Court's controversial decision, he said he disagreed, he was disappointed, but he said, I accept it, and then he went on to say, I accept its finality. He said in a very important way, there are duties much higher than party, and so he kind of set out this checklist of the perfect concession speech. He also made it clear he was conceding, and he said it is time for him to go. In a way, Bush ought to give him a big hug when Bush talks.
Norm, is this now era of good feelings about to continue?
We've got at least a week, Larry. And it'll be good. We will rally for a while. But remember, there are an awful lot of people who continue to feel outraged and bitter. It's going to be a challenge. And Governor Bush is going to have to, starting tonight, but certainly as he works through the rest of the transition, and then from the inaugural on, work very carefully to try and figure out how he can build some momentum at a time when momentum isn't going to be easy to come by and when there isn't going to be much of a transition or a honeymoon. You know, the electoral reform business is a good place for him to start, as many others have said, starting tonight, and it's got to include not just money for upgrading machinery. He ought to make a commitment to get the Justice Department to investigate some of these allegations of terrible problems in the African-American community. And we need to move to, I believe, a election that's 24 hours over a weekend, a Saturday and Sunday, so that all the polls can close at the same time and we can get rid of some of these problems with exit polls as well.
Bob Woodward, we're showing you a tape of this was earlier, after Vice President Gore finished his short address to the nation. This is him hugging both Senator Lieberman, Mrs. Lieberman, and his family and Tipper. This took place right after Gore made his concession speech. Bob Woodward, are you very, very hopeful that we're going to get a lot of the same from the president-elect?
I am sure. I mean, everyone who praises Governor Bush or President-elect Bush praises that he has this political sense, that he knows exactly how to do the right thing, particularly at emotional moments like this. And this really is not just a political moment, it's a very emotional moment. And Gore handed him, I mean, you've talked about the bitterness and the division, and there is some of that, but Gore provided no fuel for continuing bitterness and division. And so now it's Bush's job to find some way to use that political ear people say he has and that we have frequently seen to strike exactly the right notes. And it's a very long dance he has to go through here, because the rhythms of a transition, as people who have assumed the presidency would tell you, it can really kill you. One bad appointment, one appointment that is stuck and you can't get out.
You know, Larry, one of the things he really needs to do is, as Bob said, is be very careful with his appointments. There are a few people who ended up being out front in the last few weeks who said some pretty volatile things. And it would not be wise to lead with some of those who will end up being held up by a succession of Democratic senators or who would rub some of these wounds raw. He's got to be very careful here on that basis.
Do you agree, Norm, that with Bob, that Al Gore handed him a pretty good platter here?
The best possible platter that he could get right now. Now he's got his own challenge, and he does. He's an immensely charming and magnetic man in a way that doesn't often come across on television, but it does in person. That will serve him well. But Gore has given him the best opportunity right now to begin to move forward, but no one should underestimate the challenge.
Thank you, Norm. Norm Ornstein, resident scholar, American Enterprise Institute. Bob Woodward will come back with us in the next hour. We will have part 2 of Larry King Live tonight. We're extended an extra hour, and we'll be on following the speech by President-elect George W. Bush. And our guests in the next hour will include Bob Dole, the former presidential candidate. We'll return with Senators Hatch and Breaux. Reverend Jackson, who has been heard a bit, will return with us. And Congresswoman Ilana Ross-Leviton will also join us. And then we'll have a panel of Barry Richard, Bob Woodward's return, Fred Graham of Court TV, and CNN senior analyst Jeff Greenfield. The Spin Room will air tonight at midnight Eastern. We're now going to turn it back over to our pals Bernie and Judy and the gang in Washington as they take you to Austin, Texas, and the speech by President Bush. Guys?
Thank you, Larry. We're a few moments away from hearing from President-elect George W. Bush. Earlier this hour, Vice President Al Gore bowed out of election 2000.
He made reference to last night's Supreme Court ruling, and he showed some of the fighting spirit that characterized his legal challenge. But he made clear this is the end.
Let there be no doubt. While I strongly disagree with the court's decision, I accept it. I accept the finality of this outcome, which will be ratified next Monday in the Electoral College. And tonight, for the sake of our unity as a people and the strength of our democracy, I offer my concession. I also accept my responsibility, which I will discharge unconditionally, to honor the new president-elect and do everything possible to help him bring Americans together in fulfillment of the great vision that our Declaration of Independence defines and that our Constitution affirms and defends.
Vice President-elect Gore is expected to meet with President-elect Bush Tuesday.
And the keys to the transition office will be given to Dick Cheney tomorrow afternoon.
Jeff Greenfield, moments away.
Yes, and you know, in some ways, the burden on George W. Bush is a little tougher than Al Gore. All Al Gore had to do was strike a graceful note and then leave the stage. But think, Bernie and Judy, the way we normally see a candidate for the first time as president-elect, having won a clear-cut victory on election night, surrounded by cheering supporters, confetti, balloons, the scent of victory, the clear assumption of power. George W. Bush is going to step out tonight in a very different climate. And one of the things I think we ought to look for, based on where he's giving this speech in that chamber, is I think the intention is to make it look more like a State of the Union speech, a much more presidential speech in terms of trapping than the speech of a victorious candidate, because that's not what George W. Bush can look like tonight after a victory solidified not by votes, but by a Supreme Court decision. So we should really see how they cast the speech in terms of setting as well as tone.
Well, speaking of how they're going to cast a speech, let's go right to Austin at this moment to CNN's Candy Crowley, who's been watching the Bush camp. Candy, what about that?
Well, they do know that the time for balloons and confetti passed on election night. And what they have, in fact, is...
a difficult task of the two, but it was not an easy thing the Vice President had to do tonight.
Not an easy speech for the Vice President to step aside to say he strongly disagreed with the court's decision, but that he respects it, to urge his supporters to do the same. And now, after a campaign in which neither one of these men were viewed as great orators, this was viewed as a very tactical campaign. Vice President Gore trying to be a big man tonight. Now the burden in just a few moments on Governor Bush to be the same. And as Candy mentioned, we're told his biggest challenge now will be to reach across the aisle, reach out to Democrats. Time is short. This transition cut in half. Governor Bush is focused tonight not on winning an election, but on governing the country.
Bill Schneider, Vice President Gore, preparing the stage for the governor?
Well, I think he did, because he essentially did not raise any questions about the legitimacy of George W. Bush's election. He called him the president-elect, didn't raise any issues about the fact that Gore actually won the popular vote in the country. There's a big question about Bush's mandate. The country is very closely split between the parties in Congress, of course, in the presidential election, everywhere. And even in the state legislatures, it's the closest balance between the parties that we've seen in almost 50 years. What kind of mandate does this give George W. Bush? He's going to try to define it in his remarks tonight.
All sorts of history associated with George W. Bush ascending to the presidency, only the second son of a president to move into the office of the presidency himself. You're looking at pictures of the Florida State House of Representatives. This is, I'm sorry, Texas. We've had too much Florida on the brain. Texas House of Representatives. This is the chamber where the governor's staff chose to make this important speech.
Look, listen to these statistics. Bush will become the 19th Republican president, the 17th governor to become president, the first Texas governor ever to become president.
This chamber is controlled by Democrats, and I think he chose it in part to make a statement about that. This is the chamber of the Texas legislature that is under Democratic domination.
Welcome to the Texas House of Representatives chamber. It was about this time, about 6 years ago, that we were preparing to inaugurate a new governor in Texas. Many of us wondered what kind of leader he would be. We wondered how he would bring everybody together after a hard-fought election. Tonight, many people in our country are asking the same questions about George W. Bush. When he became governor, he reached out to members of the legislature of both parties. We didn't always agree on issues, but we found we could have policy differences without having gridlock. We could have debate without bitterness, and we could reach agreements and solve problems without sacrificing our principles. Above all, we learned that Governor Bush is a leader you can trust and respect. It is my honor to introduce to you a man who has earned my trust and respect, the Governor of Texas, my friend, the President-elect of the United States, the Honorable George W. Bush.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, my fellow Americans. I appreciate so very much the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Mr. Speaker, Lieutenant Governor, friends, distinguished guests. Our country has been through a long and trying period with the outcome of the presidential election not finalized for for longer than any of us could ever imagine. Vice President Gore and I put our hearts and hopes into our campaigns. We both gave it our all. We shared similar emotions, so I understand how difficult this moment must be for Vice President Gore and his family. He has a distinguished record of service to our country as a congressman, a senator, and a vice president. This evening I received a gracious call from the vice president. We agreed to meet early week